My wife called me a loser in her secret diary. Then I won $152 million. And what happened next will shock you. You ever have one of those moments where your entire life crystallizes into perfect, terrifying clarity? Mine happened at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, sitting in my Peterbilt on some forgotten rest stop outside Cheyenne, Wyoming. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. My name's Tom Miller, 45 years old, been driving trucks for the better part of 2 decades. My office has 18 wheels, gets about 6 miles to the gallon, and has seen more of America than most politicians. The cab of my truck is everything to me: office, bedroom, confessional booth, therapist's couch. It's got that particular smell that only truckers know. Mix of diesel, coffee that's been reheated one too many times, and that Pine air freshener that stopped working sometime during the Obama years, but I keep hanging there anyway. Call it nostalgia. I was somewhere between Denver and Salt Lake City when the phone rang. The caller ID said home, but home hadn't felt like home in years. It was Susan, my wife. 20 years we've been married, though lately it felt more like a business arrangement than a marriage. Like I was an employee who'd forgotten to read the fine print in his contract. She didn't even say hello anymore, just launched right into it. The water heater was acting up again. Her sister's husband, Brad, needed startup money for his craft brewery. Could I pick up some extra runs this month? The mortgage payment was coming up. Her mother needed new hearing aids. Always something. Always someone else's emergency becoming my overtime. I listened to her voice through the Bluetooth while watching the endless ribbon of I-80 unspool before me. Used to be, that voice could make my day. 20 years ago, I fell in love with her laugh. Real, genuine, made her whole face light up. These days, her laugh sounded like a cash register opening. Cha-ching. The thing about long-haul trucking is you got a lot of time to think. Too much time, maybe. I've been listening to this audiobook about ancient Rome. Marcus Aurelius, all that Stoic philosophy stuff. Guy was an emperor but spent most of his time dealing with other people's problems. Sound familiar? The narrator had this British accent that made everything sound profound. He was going on about how we're all just actors in a play, performing our assigned roles. I thought about that while Susan kept talking. What was my role? Provider. ATM on wheels. The reliable one. Good old Tom, he'll handle it. Good old Tom never complains. Good old Tom will work another 70-hour week, so Brad can pursue his dream of making IPAs that taste like grass clippings. Susan was mid-sentence about her sister's kitchen renovation when she said something that hit different. She was laughing, that fake laugh she uses with her book club friends, and she goes, "Oh, Tom's our rock, our foundation. The whole beautiful house would collapse without him. The whole beautiful house. Not our house. The house. Like I was rebar in concrete. Functional. Necessary. Invisible." That phrase kept bouncing around my skull for the next 300 miles. Foundation. You know what people do with foundations? They build on top of them, then forget they exist. Nobody throws a party to celebrate their foundation. Nobody takes pictures with it. It just sits there in the dark, holding everyone else up, slowly cracking under the pressure. I remembered our wedding day. Susan looked like something out of a magazine. Her dad, Big Bill Hutchinson, pulled me aside right before the ceremony. Smelled like bourbon and expensive cologne. Slapped me on the shoulder hard enough to bruise, and said we needed to sign some papers. "Just a formality, son," he said. "Protecting family assets. You understand." The prenup. That's what he meant. I was 25, making decent money. Thought I was marrying up. Big Bill made it clear I was. The contract was thick as a phone book. Susan's family lawyer explained it like he was talking to a child. Separate property stays separate. Inheritance stays separate. Gifts stay separate. Even lottery winnings, he'd said with a chuckle, like that was the most ridiculous thing in the world. Who wins the lottery, right? Young, stupid, and in love. That was me. I signed it. What was I protecting anyway? A 10-year-old Ford Ranger and a collection of Springsteen CDs? I figured I'd prove myself. Show them I was worth more than whatever their lawyers thought. 20 years later, I was still trying. The call ended with Susan's usual sign-off. Not, I love you. Not, drive safe. Just don't forget about Brad's thing. Click. Brad's thing. $30,000 for brewing equipment. Meanwhile, I'm eating truck stop hot dogs and sleeping in parking lots to save on motel costs. But hey, I'm the foundation, remember? I pulled into a Flying J outside North Platte, Nebraska, 14 hours straight behind the wheel. My back felt like someone had been working on it with a ball-peen hammer. The kind of tired where your bones hurt. You know that feeling? When you're so exhausted that sleep feels like it might not be enough. The truck stop was the usual circus. Lot lizards knocking on doors, drivers standing around complaining about electronic logs. That one guy who's always trying to sell something out of his trailer. I just wanted coffee and a shower, maybe one of those roller hot dogs that had been spinning since yesterday. Gourmet dining, truck stop style. That's when I saw it, right there next to the register, between the energy drinks and the questionable supplements that promise to keep you alert. The Powerball sign. Digital numbers glowing red like they were taunting me. $487 million. My old man used to call the lottery a tax on people who can't do math. He wasn't wrong. Odds are something like 300 million to 1. Better chance of getting struck by lightning while being eaten by a shark during a solar eclipse. But standing there, dead on my feet, smelling like diesel and disappointment, I thought about those odds differently. What were the odds I'd ever be more than Susan's foundation? What were the odds her family would ever see me as anything other than the help who got promoted? What were the odds that 20 years from now, I wouldn't be right here? Same truck stop, same exhaustion, same hot dogs, same nothing. $5. That's what I put down. One ticket. Quick pick. Because choosing your own numbers is just pretending you have control. The kid behind the counter, couldn't have been more than 19, looked at me with this mixture of pity and boredom. Probably saw a dozen guys like me every shift. Middle-aged truckers buying impossible dreams with crumpled bills. I stuffed the ticket in my wallet, behind my CDL and hazmat card. Forgot about it immediately. Had a load of frozen chicken to deliver to Salt Lake, and refrigerated trailers don't care about your existential crisis. 3 days later, I was parked at a rest stop somewhere in Wyoming. One of those places that's just a bathroom and some picnic tables in the middle of nowhere. The kind of dark where you can actually see the Milky Way. No light pollution, no nothing. Just you and about 1 billion stars, making you feel real small and insignificant. Which, let's be honest, is exactly how I already felt. I was eating a cold sandwich, listening to my Rome audiobook guide talking about how fortune is fickle, when I remembered the ticket. The drawing had been the night before. I pulled up the numbers on my phone. The connection was garbage. 1 bar of 3G that kept dropping to nothing. The page loaded like it was 1995. Line by line. Pixel by pixel. First number, 7. I had 7. Second number, 14. I had 14. Third number, 22. I had 22. Fourth number, 35. I had 35. Fifth number, 44. I had 44. My hand was shaking so bad, I dropped the phone. It hit the dashboard, bounced off the gear shift, landed screen up on the floor mat. The screen had gone dark. I picked it up, hands trembling like I had palsy. Woke it back up. The page had to reload. That slow, painful loading again. All 5 numbers. And the Powerball. 17, I had 17. The inside of my truck went absolutely silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silent that hurts your ears. I could hear my heart hammering against my ribs. Could hear the blood rushing through my veins. Could hear my breathing, shallow and quick like I'd just run a mile. I checked again. And again. And again. Refreshed the page until my data ran out. Then I found another site. Then another. Every single one showed the same numbers. My numbers. $487 million. Before taxes, sure. But even after Uncle Sam takes his cut, we're talking about more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. More money than everyone in Susan's family combined had ever seen. I sat there in my truck, in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, holding that ticket like it was made of nitrogen and might explode. The instrument panel clock glowed green, 2:47 a.m. Outside, the stars kept doing their thing, completely indifferent to the fact that Tom Miller, Foundation, ATM on wheels, good old reliable Tom, had just won the lottery. My first emotion wasn't joy, wasn't excitement. It was relief, like I'd been holding my breath for 20 years and could finally exhale, like I'd been carrying a weight that I didn't even realize was there until it was suddenly gone. The second emotion was fear, pure, crystalline fear, because this changed everything. Everything. I sat there until the sun came up, watching the sky turn from black to purple to pink to blue, watched the stars fade away one by one, like they were keeping my secret and disappearing to keep it safe. A couple of other trucks pulled in and out, drivers doing their logs, taking their mandatory breaks. None of them knew they were parked next to a multimillionaire. Multimillionaire. The word felt wrong in my mouth, like wearing a suit that cost more than my truck. But there it was in black and white, or green and white, I guess, since that's what money looks like. My phone buzzed. Text from Susan. Remember Brad needs answer about loan today. Also Mom's birthday next week. Don't forget. I looked at that text for a long time. Brad needs. Mom's birthday. Don't forget. Always someone needing. Always me providing. Always, always, always. But now I had the power to say no. Now I had the power to do. What exactly? I honestly didn't know. 20 years of being the foundation, and suddenly I could be the whole house. Or I could walk away from the house entirely. The sunrise was painting the mountains gold and orange. Beautiful morning in Wyoming. The kind of morning that makes you think maybe everything's going to be all right. The kind of morning that makes you believe in second chances. I put the ticket back in my wallet, carefully, like it was made of butterfly wings. Started up the Peterbilt. She roared to life, all that Detroit diesel power ready to haul whatever needed hauling. But for the first time in 20 years, I wondered if maybe I was done hauling everyone else's dreams. $487 million. The foundation was about to shift. And the whole beautiful house? Well, that remained to be seen. I pulled back onto I-80, headed west into the sunrise. The road stretched out ahead of me, same as always, but everything had changed. Everything. My phone rang. Susan again. I let it go to voicemail. I had some thinking to do. Some serious thinking. Because here's the thing about winning the lottery. It doesn't just change your bank account. It changes everything. Every relationship. Every conversation. Every single thing about your life. And sitting there in my truck, watching America wake up to my windshield, I realized something that should have been obvious. The money wasn't the prize. The choice was. For the first time in 2 decades, I had a choice. And that was worth more than all the money in the world. But I wasn't ready to make that choice yet. Not yet. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was choosing between. And for that, I needed to keep my mouth shut and my eyes open. Good old Tom. Reliable Tom. Foundation Tom. Let them think that's all I was for just a little while longer. Because sometimes the best hand play is the one nobody knows you're holding. My hand was already reaching for phone. Muscle memory, I guess. 20 years of calling Susan first with any news, good or bad. My thumb hovered over a contact. I could picture it perfectly. The scream of joy, the tears, the immediate phone calls to her family. By noon, everyone would know. By evening, we'd be planning what to do with the money. Correction, they'd be planning what to do with my money. That's when it hit me, like a slap from a ghost. Something I'd overheard 3 weeks ago. I was home for a mandatory reset, doing some maintenance on the truck in the garage. Susan was on the back deck with her book club friends. Wine Wednesday, they called it. Started at 2 in the afternoon, which tells you everything you need to know about their pressing schedules. I wasn't trying to listen, but voices carry when people are 3 glasses deep into their Pinot Grigio. Susan's friend Karen was complaining about her husband wanting to buy a boat. Then Susan laughed. That specific laugh she does when she's about to say something she thinks is clever. She said Karen was lucky her husband had dreams, even small ones. Then she said it. The words that now, sitting in my truck with a lottery ticket worth more than Fort Knox, felt like prophecy. She called me her retirement plan. Reliable but boring, like a government bond. Then she actually said, and I quote this because it's burned into my brain, that at least I was consistent. Predictably dull, but consistent. Her friends laughed. They all laughed. At me. At the man working 70 hours a week, so she could have wine Wednesdays. My thumb moved away from her contact, slowly, like I was defusing a bomb, which, in a way, I was. I sat there in that Wyoming rest stop until my logbook said I had to move. Drove the next 300 miles on autopilot, my brain running calculations. Not math calculations. Life calculations. What would happen if I called her right now? What would happen if I didn't? By the time I hit Denver, I'd made a decision. I was taking a sick day. First one in 3 years. Told dispatch I had food poisoning. Something about bad truck stop sushi. They bought it. Everyone's had bad truck stop sushi. But I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to Colorado Springs. Checked into a Hampton in under my name, paid cash. First thing I did was Google Best Divorce Lawyers Colorado. Not good ones. The best ones. The ones with websites that look like they charge $500 just to say hello. Found one. Michaels, Richardson and Associates. They had an office that looked like it belonged in a movie about rich people problems. Glass and chrome and modern art. That probably cost more than my truck. The receptionist looked at my jeans and Carhartt jacket like I'd wandered in by mistake. But money talks, even when it's wearing work boots. Especially when it's wearing work boots and mentions a lottery win. Suddenly, I wasn't just Tom the trucker. I was Mr. Miller, valued client. Funny how that works. The lawyer they assigned me looked like he ate privilege for breakfast. Harvard law degree on the wall. Pictures with people who looked important. Name was Davidson. First thing he said wasn't congratulations. It was a question. Did anyone else know about the win? When I said no, he actually smiled. First genuine smile I'd seen from someone in a suit in years. We spent 3 hours going through options. Setting up an LLC to claim the prize anonymously. Trust funds. Tax strategies. The whole 9 yards. But first, he said, we need to look at your prenup. I'd brought it with me. All 43 pages of it. Kept it in the same folder as our marriage certificate. Ironic filing system when you think about it. Davidson read it like it was a Stephen King novel. Page by page, line by line. Making notes, highlighting sections. About halfway through, he started chuckling. Not laughing. Chuckling. Like he'd found an inside joke in the legal code. Then he found it. Section 4B. He actually read it out loud, savoring each word like expensive whiskey. Any lottery winnings, gambling proceeds, inheritances, or gifts received by either party shall remain the sole and separate property of the receiving party, not subject to division in the event of dissolution of marriage. He set the papers down and looked at me over his reading glasses. Big Bill Hutchinson, in his infinite wisdom and greed, had tried to protect his daughter from the poor truck driver she was marrying. Made sure that if anyone in the family won big or inherited money, the blue-collar husband couldn't touch it. Except Big Bill forgot that door swing both ways. Davidson called it poetic justice. I called it karma with a law degree. Either way, that $487 million was mine. All mine. Legally, ironically, beautifully mine. The next step was setting up a financial advisor. Davidson knew a guy. Of course he did. Lawyers like this always know a guy. This one worked out an office that smelled like leather and old money. The kind of place where they offer you scotch at 10 in the morning and nobody blinks. We structured everything carefully. LLC to claim the ticket. Trust funds that couldn't be touched. Investment accounts that would generate more money than I could spend. All of it bulletproof. All of it protected. All of it invisible until I wanted it to be visible. The whole process took 5 days. 5 days of living in hotels, eating room service, and watching my old life from the outside. Susan called 17 times, left messages about Brad's brewery, her mother's birthday, the mortgage payment, business as usual in her world. She had no idea her foundation was about to shift. On day 6, I went home, played sick for another day, stayed in the guest room claiming I didn't want to get Susan sick. She barely noticed. Too busy planning her sister's anniversary party. 35th anniversary. They were renewing their vows in Vail. Needed $10,000 for the venue alone. Guess who was expected to contribute? That night, while Susan was at her spin class, I did something I'm not proud of, but I needed to know. Really know, not suspect. No. The attic was where we kept everything important. Tax documents, insurance papers, old photos. I told Susan I was looking for our 2019 returns. Something about a question from my dispatcher about mileage. She didn't care. She was watching Real Housewives of somewhere, drinking her wine, living her life. The filing box was exactly where I remembered. Metal, fireproof. Bought it at Costco years ago. Inside, everything was organized in Susan's Type A fashion. Color-coded folders. Labels made with that label maker she had to have. Everything in its place. The prenup was in the folder marked legal, important. Right where it should be, but next to it was something else. A leather journal, brown worn around the edges. Susan's handwriting on the cover. Plans and dreams, in that curly script she used for important things. I should have put it back. Should have closed the box, gone downstairs, pretended I never saw it. But I didn't. Couldn't. Because sometimes you need to see the truth, even when you know it's going to hurt. The first pages were from years ago. Normal stuff. Dreams about vacations, house renovations, the kids' futures. But as the years went on, the tone changed. The dreams became plans. The plans became calculations. And I became less of a person and more of a resource. Page after page of financial planning that read like a business proposal. What to do when her parents needed care. Not if, when. How much she could get from my life insurance. How to maximize my Social Security benefits. How to leverage my veteran status for loans. I was a portfolio. A diversified investment strategy. But the worst part was recent. 6 months ago, she'd written what I can only call a manifesto. She talked about feeling trapped, about wasting her potential, about being married to someone who would never be more than he was. A good man, she wrote, but good in the way a Toyota Camry is good. Reliable, practical, boring, gets you where you need to go, but nobody dreams about driving one. Then came the word that changed everything. Loser. She called me a loser. Not angry, not emotional, just matter of fact. Tom is, at his core, a loser. My role, she wrote, was to manage his resources for the benefit of the family. Her real family. Her parents, her sister, their kids. Our own kids got a mention. One line about college funds. I got nothing. I was the resource, not the recipient. The last entry was from a week ago. She calculated how much more I could make if I took on hazmat loads. More dangerous, but better pay. She'd already talked to her cousin about getting me certified. Didn't mention she'd never asked me if I wanted to haul hazardous materials. Why would she? Toyotas don't get to choose their cargo. I sat there in that attic, surrounded by the detritus of 20 years of marriage, holding that journal like it was a murder weapon, which, in a way, it was. It had murdered everything I still believed about us. Every last shred of hope that somewhere, under all the disappointment and routine, there was still love, or at least respect. But here's the thing about death. Sometimes it's also a birth. The death of my delusions gave birth to something else. Clarity. Crystal clear, high definition. 4K clarity. I wasn't angry. Anger would have required surprise, and I wasn't surprised. Some part of me had always known. That's why I'd hesitated to call her from Wyoming. That's why I'd hired the lawyers first. Deep down, in that place where we stored truths we're not ready to face, I'd known. I photographed every page of that journal. Every single one. Then I put it back exactly where I found it. Closed the box. Went back downstairs. Susan didn't even look up from her show. Something about women screaming at each other over dinner seemed appropriate. That night, lying in the guest room bed, I thought about Marcus Aurelius again, my audiobook philosopher. He had this quote about how we suffer more in our imagination than in reality. But old Marcus never met Susan, never had to realize that his reality was worse than anything he could have imagined, that for 20 years he'd been living someone else's investment strategy. The lottery ticket was in my wallet, now secured in a safety deposit box at a bank Susan didn't know about. $487 million. Numbers so big they stopped feeling real. But you know what felt real? The journal. The words. Loser. Resource. Reliable but boring. I made my plan that night. Not revenge. Revenge implies emotion, and I was past emotion. This was justice. Clean, legal, documented justice. I would give Susan exactly what she'd planned for, exactly what she'd built. I would remove the foundation and see how well her beautiful house stood on its own. But not yet, not tomorrow. Timing mattered. The lawyers needed to finish their work. The trust needed to be established. Everything needed to be perfect, bulletproof, as reliable as a Toyota Camry. The next morning, Susan made breakfast. Eggs over easy, wheat toast, coffee black. Same breakfast she'd made for 20 years. She talked about her sister's vow renewal, about Brad's brewery, about her mother's birthday party, about everyone and everything except us. I nodded, smiled, agreed to everything. Yes, I'd pick up extra runs. Yes, I'd look into hazmat certification. Yes, I'd contribute to the vow renewal. She kissed me goodbye on the cheek. The same spot she always did. Mechanical. Routine. Like punching a time clock. Then she went to her yoga class. And I went back to my truck. Back to my office, bedroom, confessional. Back to the road. But everything had changed. I wasn't driving away from something anymore. I was driving toward something. Toward a future that, for the first time in decades, belonged to me. Only me. The highway stretched out ahead. Same as always, but now I knew where it was leading. Not to more of the same. Not to another 20 years of being someone's resource, but to freedom, to choice, to a life where being reliable wasn't an insult and being boring wasn't a life sentence. I turned on my audiobook. Marcus was talking about how every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Smart guy, that emperor. But even he couldn't have imagined this beginning. Couldn't have imagined how sometimes the end isn't tragic. Sometimes it's the best thing that ever happened to you. The game had indeed begun. Susan just didn't know she was playing yet. But she would. Soon enough, she would. And when she did, she'd learn that the boring, reliable Toyota Camry she'd taken for granted, it had one hell of an engine under the hood. One she'd never bothered to look at. Her loss. Literally. I drove west into Colorado's sunset, $1 million secret in my pocket, future wide open ahead of me. The foundation was about to make its move. And the beautiful house? It was about to learn what happens when you forget that even the strongest building is nothing without what holds it up. Time to see how well it stood on its own. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in acting. I should have gotten an Oscar. Every morning, same routine. Kiss on the cheek from Susan, coffee, small talk about nothing. Every evening, dinner together, her complaining about her day, me nodding along. Academy Award material, I'm telling you. But behind the scenes, I was building something. Methodically, precisely, like assembling an engine where every part had to be perfect or the whole thing would blow up in your face. First thing I did was scan every page of that journal. High resolution. PDFs backed up in 3 different cloud services. My lawyer Davidson called it documentation. I called it ammunition. But we were both right. The financial advisor, guy named Chun, was some kind of wizard with numbers. We set up trusts for my kids. Irrevocable trusts. That's a fancy way of saying nobody could touch that money except them. Not me, not Susan, not her family. $20 million each, accessible when they turn 25. Another $10 million each for education, available immediately. The rest stayed with me, generating interest in accounts Susan would never see. Davidson filed the divorce papers, but held them, like a card dealer holding the ace. Everything was ready, waiting. The only question was when to play the hand. Then Susan made it easy. She called me one Thursday afternoon, all excited. Her sister's husband, Brad, had found the perfect location for his brewery. Some abandoned warehouse in the trendy part of town. They needed $50,000 for the down payment. By Monday, could I make it happen? I said yes. Of course I said yes. But I had a condition. I want to discuss our financial future. All of us, together. Sunday dinner at Morton's Steakhouse. Her favorite place. The one where they know her name, and she always orders the same thing. Filet mignon medium, with a side of superiority complex. She was thrilled, even suggested bringing her sister. Perfect, I said. The more the merrier. Sunday came around like Christmas morning. I put on my best shirt. The blue one Susan bought me 5 years ago that I never wore because it wasn't comfortable. Tonight, comfort wasn't the point. I got to Morton's early. Requested a specific table, corner booth, private, where nobody could overhear what was about to happen. Tipped the waiter $100 to make sure we wouldn't be interrupted once I gave the signal. He looked at the bill like he'd never seen one before. Probably hadn't, not from a guy who looked like me. Susan arrived with her sister Jennifer. They were glowing, practically vibrating with anticipation. They'd already spent that $50,000 in their heads. Probably the rest of my imaginary money, too. We ordered, made small talk. Susan complained about my truck, said I spent too much on tools and parts. Jennifer agreed, said something about investing in real things instead of toys. I smiled, nodded, let them talk. They were writing my closing argument for me. The food came. We ate. Susan was telling a story about her yoga instructor, something about chakras and energy flow. I wasn't listening. I was watching these two women who'd mapped out my life without ever asking what I wanted, watching them laugh at jokes that weren't funny, watching them plan futures with money they didn't have. Then Susan said it, the words that started everything ending. She sighed, dramatically, the way she did when she wanted attention, and said, wouldn't it be amazing if money just fell from the sky? Just once? So they could stop worrying about bills and start living their real lives? Their real lives. Like the last 20 years had been a rehearsal. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out a manila folder, set it on the table between the bread basket and the wine bottle. Susan looked at it like it might bite. Jennifer leaned forward, curious. I opened the folder, took out the first document, placed it carefully on the white tablecloth. It was a bank statement. My new account, the one she didn't know existed. The balance was printed in bold at the bottom, $152 million. The silence was so complete, I could hear the steaks sizzling 3 tables over. Susan's face went through every emotion in the human spectrum. Confusion, recognition, joy, pure, predatory joy. Her mouth opened. I knew what was coming. The scream, the tears, the we're rich. But I wasn't done. Before she could speak, I placed a second document on top of first. Divorce papers. Already filed. Just waiting for signatures. The joy on her face curdled like milk in sun. Her sister gasped. Actually gasped like she was in a soap opera. But I still wasn't done. The third document was the coup de grace. The prenuptial agreement. Section 4B highlighted in yellow. The section her daddy insisted on. The section that protected his baby girl from the gold-digging truck driver. The section that had just protected the truck driver from his baby girl. Susan found her voice. Started babbling about mistakes, about misunderstandings, about being a team. We're a team, Tom. We've always been a team. 20 years, Tom. The kids, Tom. Think about the kids. That's when I pulled out my phone, opened the photos, her journal, page by page, laid the phone on the table, screen up so she could see her own handwriting, her own words, loser, resource, retirement plan, reliable but boring. I finally spoke, quiet, Calm, like I was reading a grocery list. Told her she wanted money from the sky, and she got it, just not the way she planned. Told her to thank her father for the prenup. His paranoia had saved me from her greed. Poetic, really. She tried crying. Real tears, not the fake ones she used to get her way. But tears don't work on stone, and that's what I become. Stone, granite, immovable. Jennifer tried to jump in, something about family values and doing the right thing. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in years. Saw Susan in 20 years. Same entitlement, same delusion that the world owed her something. I asked her one question. Where was family values when your sister was writing about me like I was livestock? The waiter came by, asked if everything was all right. I gave him the signal. He disappeared like smoke. Smart kid. Susan switched tactics. Went from sad to angry. Threatened lawyers. Threatened to take everything. Threatened to destroy me in court. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I pulled out one more document. A receipt. Proof that the lottery ticket was purchased with my personal account, on my personal time, in my name only. Davidson had been thorough. Every base covered. Every angle protected. I stood up, straightened my uncomfortable blue shirt, looked at the two women who planned to feast on my carcass for the rest of their lives. Susan's mascara was running, black streams down her cheeks. Jennifer's mouth was opening and closing like a fish out of water. I dropped $300 bills on the table. For the meal, then I said the last words I'd ever say to Susan in person. Told her the divorce would be final in 60 days if she didn't contest it. 6 months if she did. Either way, the outcome would be the same. She'd get what the prenup said she'd get. The house, bought before we married. Her car, her personal belongings. Nothing else. Then I walked out. Didn't run. Didn't hurry. Just walked. Through the restaurant where other diners were trying not to stare. Through the parking lot where my truck sat waiting. Faithful as always. I climbed in, started her up, and drove away from 20 years of my life. My phone started ringing before I hit the highway. Susan, Jennifer, then Susan's mother. Her father, her brother in Arizona I'd met twice. The whole family tree. Lighting up my phone like a Christmas display. I turned it off. First time in 20 years I'd been unreachable. Felt like taking off a chain I didn't know I'd been wearing. The next 6 weeks were what you might call interesting. Susan tried everything. Hired 3 different lawyers. Each one read the prenup, looked at the evidence, and told her the same thing. She was screwed. Legally, thoroughly, completely screwed. By her own father's paranoia. She tried emotional manipulation. Sent the kids to talk to me, but I'd already talked to them. Showed them everything. The journal, the bank statements, the prenup. My son, 22 and smart as hell, read his mother's words about me being a loser and said one thing. Dad, you should have left years ago. My daughter, 19 and fierce, was less forgiving. She hasn't spoken to Susan since. The divorce went through in 58 days. Susan contested nothing in the end. Her lawyer advised her to take what she could get. She got the house we lived in, worth maybe $300,000. Her Lexus, her jewelry, her retirement account with $40,000 in it. Compared to $152 million, it was pocket change. Compared to what she planned to take from me over the next 20 years, it was justice. Big Bill tried to intervene. Came to see me at the Hampton, in where I was staying. Still had that bourbon and cologne smell. Still had that patronizing tone. Offered to mediate. I showed him Section 4B of his own contract. Watched his face go from red to purple to white. He'd screwed his own daughter to protect her from me. Shakespearean, really. I left Colorado the day the divorce was final. Bought a place in Montana. Not a mansion, just a ranch. 40 acres of peace and quiet. A workshop bigger than a house. View of the Rockies that made you believe in God, or at least in something bigger than yourself. First thing I bought for the new place wasn't furniture. Wasn't a TV. It was tools. The Snap-on set I'd been dreaming about since I was 25. $10,000 worth of American-made steel. Susan would have called it wasteful. I called it therapy. The kids came to visit that first Christmas. We didn't talk about their mother. We talked about their futures, their dreams, their plans that had nothing to do with managing someone else's resources. My son wanted to start his own business, software development. I wrote him a check. Not from the trust. That was his safety net. This was seed money. Investment in his dream, not mine. My daughter was in pre-med, wanted to be a surgeon. Save lives, not manage them. I paid off her student loans. Set up an account for medical school. Told her the only string attached was that she had to be happy. Revolutionary concept in our family. I hired a guy to manage the money. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. Didn't want to become what Susan had been. Obsessed with numbers, blind to life. He sends me reports. I don't read them. Long as the kid's trust is secure and the bills are paid, the rest is just paper. Started fixing up old trucks in my workshop. Not for money, for joy. For the satisfaction of taking something broken and making it whole. There's a metaphor in there somewhere, but I'm not smart enough to find it. Or maybe I'm finally smart enough now to look. Met a woman at the farmer's market. Sarah owns a small coffee shop in town. Laughs at my jokes, even the bad ones. Especially the bad ones. Doesn't know about the money. Thinks I'm just a retired trucker with a nice workshop. We go fishing, take long drives, talk about books and movies, and nothing important. It's nice. Nice in a way that has nothing to do with reliability or being boring. Just nice. Susan remarried last month. Some real estate guy from Denver. Jennifer called to tell me. Thought I should know. I wished him well. Meant it, too. Hope he's got better lawyers than she does. Some nights, I sit on my porch, looking at those Montana stars. Same stars I was looking at in Wyoming when I won. But they look different now. Clearer, brighter. Like someone cleaned the windshield I've been looking through my whole life. I think about Marcus Aurelius sometimes. My old audiobook philosopher. He had this quote about how we suffer more in imagination than reality. But he had another one, too, about how the best revenge is not to be like your enemy, not to become what hurt you. The money didn't make me happy. That's the truth everyone who wins a lottery eventually learns. But it did something better. It made me free. Free from expectations that weren't mine. Free from dreams that belonged to someone else. Free from being a resource instead of a person. I won $487 million. After taxes, lawyers, and trusts, I kept about $90 million for myself. More than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. But the real jackpot, the real prize, it wasn't the money. It was discovering that the man Susan called a loser had been winning all along. He just hadn't known the game he was playing. Now I do. The game is simple. Be yourself. Make your own choices. Live your own life. Love people who love you back, not your function. That's the jackpot. That's the prize. And unlike lottery tickets, everyone's got the same odds of winning that one. You just have to be willing to pay the price. And sometimes the price is everything you thought you were. Worth it, though, every penny. That's my story. Guy wins lottery, loses wife, finds himself. Not exactly Shakespeare, but it's mine. And for the first time in 20 years, that's enough. Actually, it's more than enough. It's everything.